first 10 students down, so maybe U2, U4. The goals are to just thoroughly discuss the topic. It's not a debate. Nobody's trying to win. We're trying to present as many points of view and use as many ethical theories as possible. The second goal is that everyone participates. Usually in this demonstration seminar, that's not a problem. The bigger problem is getting people to shut up long enough so everyone gets a chance to speak, which is delightful. But this is kind of an all-star group of students. And then the third goal is to have the professors say nothing. And that's a little bit of a challenge because the guy who runs this sometimes can't help himself. But usually he just says switch. So the overall goal of the course is to have students realize and actually perform doing ethics without a professor or a coach. And it really is usually remarkable to see how well that goes. So without further ado, in the interest of time, I'm going to take my seat. I'm going to ask a question. What's the best way to manage, organize, and administer college admissions?
One specific way that colleges should be like administering admissions. However, I think they need to create like a system of different practices in order to create like equalness across the board. I know like a lot of colleges like partner with College Board and the people who like administer the SAT. So if they could almost create like a system that's applicable to most universities across the country, I think that'd be one of the more like fair ways to do it. That way there's no discrepancies or like gray areas of like, well, this school, you don't have to take any tests, but this school requires SATs. I know like each college has their own system, which is great, but it does create those gray areas that people are getting into school without putting in the effort other students are, and they're not given the opportunity to go because of how their school requires admissions.
But I think that some people aren't good test takers, so by having the tests, and let's say you have a perfect GPA and have a really bad ACT or SAT score, then that can really make your application look lesser, as opposed to someone who's a good test taker, who has a great SAT score, but maybe not has the best GPA. So I feel like there should be less of a gray area in that sense, that I'm not a good test taker, but I have a really good GPA. So I know that some schools I looked at didn't want me because of my not good SAT score.
That's a really good point. That's why I think like I prefer schools that are test optional. I'm pretty confident Lasell is one of them. So I think instead of being like everyone has the SAT, everyone has to take the ACT, it's great to have that as test optional, and it'd be nice if all schools could be like that.
But also, yeah, as long as they don't use that as their main looking point at, oh, well, this person chose not to do it.
Well, yeah, but I know like when I was applying to schools, they were like, if you want to be considered for this scholarship, you should submit your SAT scores. It'll increase your chance, which then encourages people to take the SATs.
There's also the fact that like money comes into it too. Like if you have more money, you can afford to tutor, or you don't necessarily have to work on the weekends, and you can spend that extra time studying or stuff like that. Some of the stuff that they were talking about in the article is that there's some students who have put in all this work to do well in school and to do well academically, but then on the outside they're working till 3 a.m. or they don't have the money to be able to afford to get tutors or to do stuff like that. So there's just more that goes into getting good test scores than just being a good or bad test taker.
Yeah, I like your point, because I think what a student's like scores and grades are doesn't really reflect them all the time. I think you can show a student's a hard worker because maybe they're working all weekend, or because they have to make money because maybe their family doesn't have it. So if they're spending all that time and their grade's kind of sinking, yeah, they're a hard worker, but their grade doesn't necessarily reflect that.
I think Allie's point of like an equal playing field for all colleges is a really good idea, and maybe like a scoring-based system where academics hit a certain point, extracurriculars, athletics, like even I read an article with ethical engagement, like look to what the students are doing in the community, their family involvement, and take all those into consideration, but on an equal, like every college has the same scoring-based system.
I think that one thing that needs to be brought up is that life isn't fair for the most part. So trying to make the whole college entrance, getting to college, everything, it shouldn't be fair in my opinion, just because that's the real world. Like, not everyone's going to have that equal chance. Yeah, it sucks. But like, I think that's something that we just need to kind of accept, unless there's a way around it.
No, I agree. Like, I think there's nothing wrong with being competitive. if you go out in the workforce, it's competitive. So if we keep setting up like future generations, like holding their hand, being like, you know, we see you did a sport for like 1 year, you deserve to go to this college, compared to like everyone else, you know, did a varsity sport for 4 years, was in drama club, everything else. You kind of have to create that competition amongst peers in order to like keep that dynamic in the workforce later on.
I think part of the problem is too, it goes back to the scandal that was happening, is that, like, I think one of the arguments that people were making is that it's not that, I don't know how I'm trying to do this, is that there's too much emphasis on like the money aspect of it. Like, yeah, everything may not be fair, and it's true, like not everybody deserves to go to Harvard, like that's why there's a low acceptance rate. Like not everybody has what it takes to go to Harvard, but then there's some people that don't have what it takes, but they're getting into Harvard because of the money and because of this, while everyone else who may deserve it for many other reasons are not because of the money aspect. And I think that that's like where, at least where my argument is going.
I think like a big thing about that is there's a whole like class issue like crossing into that. Like some aspects of college admissions are unfair and just kind of like simply arbitrary, and that's what the articles are saying. But this like issue of people just paying their way in brought this whole different aspect of like I don't know, just class issues.
And I think
You can go.
Thank you. No, I think it's hard to tell which that kind of tell a college you have to do one specific thing. I guess it's what the college values. You look at these Ivy League schools and they value grades, so maybe that's what they want. And then you look at a school like Lasell that values community. So like a school like Lasell wouldn't necessarily, or you think, wouldn't only look at grades, but would value an interview where you actually sat down with someone and kind of just discuss your goals for the next 4 years, and everyone was kind of on the same page as to why you're choosing the school, not just what your grades show.
I think part of it, and the not fair part of it, is I was partially accepted to a school until I paid the money, and then I would be fully accepted into the school. And I think that is wrong, because I think that if you are right for the school, you should just get accepted and then have your choices, not say, well, you could come to the school, but pay us this fee first and then you get in. And it has to do also with there are companies that will apply to colleges for you, and that costs money, and that takes your money, and you don't have to do all the work. And same with the SATs and ACTs. These companies are making money from forcing people to take the tests. I think that's what's wrong.
Yeah, to expand on that, a lot of colleges, it just costs money to send in an application.
Yeah.
A couple $100 for certain schools. That totally breaks up the whole class system right there.
And if you're trying to do the Harvards and the Stanfords and the Yales, and those are $400, $500 each, you're just dropping $10 grand on applications that you're not even going to get into.
And now you're limiting schools.
I guess that raises the question of are schools allowed to be arbitrary in that process? Are they like you said about Lasell and community? Are schools allowed to kind of pick and choose what aspects they prefer and people applying?
Yeah.
If that's the case, then they should really be straightforward in their application process, being this is what we are looking for, so that if you're looking at it and you realize you don't have what you need, you'll save the time, the effort, and the money from just knowing that you don't necessarily have all the standards right now.
I think because at the end of the day, a school is a business, that they can be kind of selective, because they're not going to, when they accept students, they're investing in that student's career in higher education, and that's also costly to them. So they're not going to expel these resources on a student they don't think is going to make it past the first semester. So I kind of understand why they're picky with certain elements. If they just see a student, they just kind of chilled in high school, they got B's, which are good, but they didn't do anything else, they're probably not going to want that student, because they're not going to contribute anything post-grad either. They're just going to kind of be there, and it's not really worth the investment.
I think it goes back to as well what Matt was saying about the school's values. It depends on what school you're applying to and what that school is looking for. And I think a lot of times if you look at the mission statement of the school, it'll let you know what the school is looking for and what they want in their students. And if you're going to fit that, then they'll accept you, and if not, then they won't. And I think I don't think that's unfair. I don't think that has, yeah. I think the unfair part of it is that there is more advantages for some people over others. So
Yeah, they can get like a leg up if they have the money to back it up.
Right.
I agree with that, because I know when I was researching schools, I looked to the mission statement, and that's kind of what got me with Lasell was their values, but like the money does play a big role, and I think that's where like the ethical issues come into it, like in buying your way into a school compared to the student who worked hard, did the grades, got involved in the community, and then you have what just happened where they didn't do anything, they just paid their way in.
I guess, something I think that needs to be brought up is like the whole college admission scandal. It's a scandal, it's in the news, but it's not new. Like, this has been going on for as long as we've been born. Before that, like, this just got a lot of coverage, and that's why we're hearing about it. So I feel like, I don't know where I was going with this exactly.
I mean, like, it's only an issue because someone famous did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And even like, what's the difference between like the scandal and a family who can afford to just donate to the school?
Yeah.
And give them a lot of money for a new library. Like, where's that line drawn? Because that obviously gives favoritism towards that family.
Switch?
Every girl was like,
So you can either pick up where they left off or pick up in their direction.
They left off at like the college scandal.
So, sorry. As long as you guys are all in agreement, we should pick up where they left off. One of the things that like came up while we were talking was about the fact that a school is a business and that they are within their right to like want to increase their value based on like selection and that process. I feel like if a school can make a decision and pick people based off what would increase their value in that essence, then they should also be able to accept money from people if they feel like that will also increase their value. If you went about a situation and you tried to say, okay, well, if you're going to give me this money and I can build a new library and all I have to do is accept your child, cool. The same way I can say, oh, I only want the smart kids in my group. Like value and what's tangible and what's not, like, should be discussed, because we can't say that they have a right to be selective and then say, okay, but wait, if you try to pay for it, then now it's an issue. I can pick you on intelligence, but not on cash.
It's just tough. I think it's going back to like what the other group said, because that's just like a point. That like 33 parents were like brought up in this recent scandal, and like a lot of them, like he had mentioned, were high-profile parents. And I think that's ultimately why it's coming to fruition right now, is because they were high-profile. And like some of these monies, or some of these amounts of monies were like egregious amounts, like $450,000, or just huge amounts, like more than one library. I don't know. It's just like so. It just, I don't know. It makes me think that yeah, this has been happening, and it's happening a lot, evidently. But these amounts of money are just so large and egregious for a singular student to go to the institution. It just seems.
Well, and with the scandal, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the scandal wasn't donations. I think the scandal was them paying like crazy amounts of money for these students to get in, but I don't think that money was to build a library or to like, so that's where I feel like, because that point was like kind of crazy that you made of like, isn't that like a value in itself that they're kind of bettering the school by accepting someone because now they have this influx of cash? I think that kind of throws like such a crazy idea into the mix, but I think with the scandal, the problem was too that where was the money going? Like it was to pay off people, but it wasn't to benefit the school.
Well, ultimately, so the scandal was, there was like a guy that one of the articles had mentioned named William Singer, I believe was his name, and he was, kind of like the main point of contact for people who were looking to participate in schemes such as this. And ultimately, these large donations went to William Singer, and they went to keep them to the university.
So I think that, and I'm asking these questions really just out of genuine confusion. So forgive me, I've been in this country for 8 years. So I feel like, all right, let me start with this. In our society, we all pay a specific amount of money just to generally live. You know you have to pay rent, you gotta pay your bills, all these different like things factor in. You pay a specific amount, and then correct me where I deviate and I'm wrong about not how money is used in the United States of America, but you pay a specific amount of money that goes towards like taxes. And that taxes is how you benefit the collective. So in this situation, the taxes is the money that you're considering like the donations, the ones that are actually going to benefit the school. But in our regular society, there's a large influx of money that doesn't go necessarily to benefit anyone but the people that own their institutions, buildings, healthcare, it doesn't matter. If we look at this situation from a perspective of how the entire country runs and works, I don't think I actually understand what they're doing wrong.
Right, because if you pay higher taxes, then you go to better public schools, is sort of your point. It's like the more money you're paying, like the higher education, so it sort of follows.
It's everything inclusive, because money makes the world go round, all of it. Like, it's how we decide which one of us are in a specific class, or which one of us should be seen in a specific light, our clothes, our entire, so like the school is just another extension of that power. If we all had cancer, and we know cancer is like terminal, and everyone on this side of the room has the money to afford treatment, are we really going to be like, oh, that's unfair, like we should all be I mean, technically in rationale, yes, we should all have the right to be able to have treatment. It shouldn't just be the rich, but are we going to be like, oh, shucks. Fuck the rich. This is so unfair.
Yeah.
I think a college would be more prone to take someone who has more money, just because like colleges, just like ours, if we want to expand like ours to be a university, so like they're gonna take like people with more money that's gonna like be willing to donate. It's just like I said this in class to like BC, like they're prone to like take kids in whose parents have already been there because they know like their parents like love the school, and like now they encourage their kids to come to the school, so they're going to donate to the school because like how much they love it, and they're like they know that they can make money off of like that family. So I think it's like the reason behind it.
And I feel like that's kind of like the essence of America in general. The world is unfair, like he said before. Like, there's no sense of equality. To put in Rawls' idea of justice and what is fairness into the situation is, although it's beautiful, and if we were like, okay, we're going to apply the Bill of Ignorance and everyone should have the same kind of ability to get into college, that sounds cool, but is that our reality?
I also want to just like shed some light on like, because you had said you don't necessarily see like what's going like what's wrong, and I just wanted to maybe shed some light on that. And I just think the main what's wrong, where it's like an ethical debate, is that if it costs $10 to go to Lasell for everyone, and you know you got to pay $10, you get your diploma, it costs $10. If we have people coming to Lasell saying, I'll pay you $10, but I'll give you another extra 10 because my kid is really not so bright, then that not so bright student is taking a spot from any other student that could have applied to Lasell and paid the $10 just like everyone else. So, you know, and then you take that into a Harvard, you got a student paying just a large lump sum of the donations taken from a student who worked their butts off and worked on the weekends to save money to pay for these, you know, these egregious test scores, what have you. So like those are the things. And also in the college scandal, these families were like fabricating SAT scores, ACT scores, fabricating. There was a whole athletics department, which I would like to talk about, which is, I think we need to separate athletics and admission, because I think those two just are so evil together. Makes us lie.
But admissions lets athletics do that. That was going to be one of my arguments, is the school could say, go to the athletics teams and be like, hey, like, you can't recruit any more kids outside, you have to recruit within the school. But because, like, talking about, like, Mississippi, like, Alabama, like, they're known for sports. So they're going to recruit for their sports team, because, like, that's where they, like, get their money. Like, they have big stadiums, they're known for sports, so they're going to recruit that, and the school knows it. And you never hear, like, of, like, Mississippi being like, I mean, maybe you do, I don't know, the best education, the greatest education, but you hear about their sports team being, like, the best, and they just won the cup and whatever. But it's like all the school, like what they're known for and how they do it.
So I guess that goes back to what the first group's point was that schools should be allowed to have like their own, what they value.
Exactly.
I think like my example that I was just thinking about is like NYU is offering free tuition to students that are in the medical field, and it's in order to get them to be like part of a family practice, because so many students now go for like specialized doctors, but we don't have enough like doctors practicing family medicine. So I think like that is an example of like a school trying to like show the value of education and trying to help the students, and that's what I think like situations like this, that's where it lacks. Like it's almost being able to pay off your school like that and paying your way into a school is showing like your education doesn't matter. It's like your class standing. Someone else said class standing in it, so.
I don't know if it necessarily shows that the education doesn't matter as much as it just in general sheds light on the system. We practice education one specific way in America. Like, I don't mean to put you on the spot. But like, we'll get to you in a second. Wait your turn. But like, and you have to just think to yourself, like, I hope I get a teacher that understands education to that extent and be like, okay, like, I'm gonna teach you in these multitudes of ways. Like, I don't necessarily think that if you're paying for your child to get into a school, it could mean that your child is not as smart as the other student working. Like someone in the other group brought up the fact that you could take a test and you still not do well on it because you aren't a test taker. I don't know if I necessarily believe in that, but I do believe that everyone's capabilities stem from different ways. And if your teacher doesn't gear towards helping you figure out your best way of learning, then it will look like, oh, you're not really getting school. And then as a parent, you want your child to succeed. You want your child to do better. You would like to provide the best opportunities for your child. So if that meant, oh, I'm gonna pay for my child to do, and I know it sounds unethical, I hear myself. But I still think it has like rationale. Like for instance, with professors, I don't know how many of you guys have him as a teacher, but when he teaches us, it's like in two different complete ways. One is where he just gives us a book and sends us to go learn like separately, digest the information, and then once we get back, then he's like, okay, cool, you've read it, let's talk about what you've learned. The other one is where it's like sometimes it's not even the book, we never even like touch it, and it's really just your thought process. So you can pick apart all of the information he's giving you and really like analyze what he said, how you feel completely. Not everyone teaches that way though.
I just think it uses these students too much. Like if we're gonna get to those little ethical theories, I really do think when you admit students based on something that isn't for a normal student, not part of the admission process, a donation, a third-party donation that comes directly from you or from that William Singer guy that then puts it to the university, whatever. When you dump that much money into a school and that's not something required for other students, I think you're using the other students as like means to your end, getting your child into college, and that's just not fair.
Switch.
Can you pick up where they left off?
So I thought what Bert said was awesome. Like, why is this wrong? Like, if the schools have rights to be arbitrary and unfair in the process, like, why is this wrong? Like we all kind of understand that it's wrong, but I don't think we really have discussed why.
I think it goes back to what he said, treating other students as a means to an end. Like you take that spot away from someone who genuinely deserved it. Like someone's paying the amount of money to get their student in, and you have the student who has worked their butt off to get in to this school, and you take none of the money. So like the other students who are working so hard are just being treated as a means to an end.
But I think that brings up Steph's point in terms of athletics, because I know that there have been students that do not have good GPAs and test scores and stuff, but the school will be like, we will give you the highest scholarship possible to come to our school and be on our sports team, even though you have none of the requirements to even earn yourself said ginormous scholarship, but they just want you that bad. And I feel like that has to go with like, when we pay this money, it's going towards these other students' education, not actually like our own. Because, I mean, there's donors and stuff, but I mean, I know that some of my money is going towards other people's scholarships because I can afford a bit more than other kids can.
Well, I just know for Lasell, like the Lasell Fund is usually what funds people's scholarships, and that's made up only of donations.
Yeah,
So
I
when-
know for Lasell,
Yeah.
but like,
And I think more of the
trillions
like,
of other colleges.
the smaller private colleges, it's the same way, it's their fund, their donation fund. It's like your tuition is supposed to go directly like towards your education. It's not to fund scholarships, it's like a whole different bank account.
Well, to go back to like the values and the point that you brought up, so some colleges that do recruit for D1, wouldn't that be in their values that like you might not be the smartest, but you have the best sports abilities? So of course we're gonna want you, whereas someone with really good grades, they might be horrible at sports and like they don't really reflect the values of that school. And plus when it comes to like D1, a lot of like schools have like sponsors who will donate back to them, which then goes to improving the college, which benefits all.
Yeah, even when like, you talk about like D1 schools, I have a friend who plays baseball for a D1 school, and they gave him a full ride, but they told him exactly what he's majoring, what classes he's taking. Like, academics is totally like second side to him, but the school has a really good sports program, and that's what they focus on, and that's how him as an athlete is like contributing to that school. And then the same way that someone who gets an academic scholarship, they're contributing to the school by having maybe a higher graduation rate and a higher GPA like, throughout their entire campus. But then you have these people whose parents are paying for their kids to go in, they're not contributing to the school at all. So that's where it's like, yeah, these athletes are given a free ride to just play sports, and maybe it's not academics, but like you said, that school may value sports a little bit more, and that's how they get their money. It's more the fact that they're all figuring out a way to contribute, but then you have these kids whose parents are just rich and not really making their kids work for something that they're gaining in. So really, what does a student besides a degree get out of that?
I feel like that's kind of just like life in general, though. It's like our system of life is that like, unfortunately, the rich get more if they have money, and that's just kind of, it's not just college, it's like in everything, in workforce and everything. A lot of people just get because of money, they don't get because of skills.
I think that also ties into Nick's question, like why do we know this is wrong? Because it also reflects on a bigger societal issue, like you said. It kind of almost mirrors like the class system we have in place in this country.
Yeah. I think though an issue is if everyone was in the same position as like Lori Laughlin's in, where she can afford to pay this guy to go take the SATs for her kid. She can pay this guy to Photoshop pictures of her kids being on her own team. Why wouldn't she do it if she knows her kids aren't going to get into a good college just based off of their skills? It's kind of like if you have the means to do something, I feel like most parents would do it for their kids. It might not be good that they're doing it, but they're still going to do it to make sure that their child can get ahead in life.
Yeah, but I think to an extent, it's like how much are they going to end up getting out of that? Mm-hmm. Because like in real life, there is rejection, and I think that facing that can turn you into a stronger individual eventually. So in reality, I think they're almost, when you coddle someone, they're not going to figure it out by themselves ever. Like if everything's given to them, they'll never realize they have to do it for themselves.
I agree with that. I think when it comes to like the payment, like from these rich and powerful people, the only people that benefit out of it is the school. Like the students don't benefit, any of them, even the one getting into the school. I mean, they're there because of their money and nothing else. I mean, like they're like losing out on a terrible life lesson. Like they're just going around and they can buy their way out of anything in life.
That also,
I feel like that though, like it's more on the parent aspect. I mean, obviously the colleges are gonna, if they're accepting the money, then they're accepting the money, but it's like up to the parent to teach their child that lesson, or like let them go through that lesson. Without them doing that, then obviously they're gonna think they're gonna get what they want because that's how their parents raised them.
that also just like ties back into like values in general, like we've talked about like the college's values, but I know personally if my parents had the money to like buy me into Harvard, they still wouldn't, because one of their values is like hard work, and I think money is a huge resource, and if someone has the money, it would be better well spent hiring tutors, which I know that still like doesn't really level the playing field. However, the student is then putting in the work, they're meeting with the tutor, they're still the one taking the SAT, they're still trying, which I think is a little more important than just writing a check and be like, all right, go build a library now.
But I think that goes back to Taylor's point though, like once the parents are getting these kids into school, like unless their parents have actual power in the actual school, the kids are on their own by then. Yeah, you're into the school, but can you actually handle the classes and the workload and the the life and the society that you're actually in. Like parents can't pay your society. They just like they can't pay for all the people around you to be nice to you. They
I
can
think
help you get in, but they can't. do
in
something
time,
like
life
that.
will kind of settle that one out. If the kid can't handle living on their own, or they can't make it to all their classes in one day, they're gonna last a semester. Let's be real. The college also is gonna be like continue to like pat them on the back, be like, better luck next semester. We'll keep you here, because they're then wasting their financial resources to keep that student in the classroom.
So I think that was an issue in the case where Lori Laughlin's daughter, Olivia, she was known for like missing all of her classes and not being smart, yet she somehow still was there. And I think it was only her first year, but somehow like she still made it to her second semester, you know, she showed up to like none of her classes. So do you think that's just because of her parents who they were?
I was gonna say it probably has to do like, even though the student is still living on their own, like Lori Loughlin could still be donating all the boatloads of money to the school, and they can be like, oh, let me just pass her, or like let me mark her as she was here, even though she clearly wasn't. Like all the professor has to do is write a check next to her name, and oh, she's in class. Like if they're still getting these boatloads of money, nobody's gonna say anything.
I have a question. It's about the tutor thing. Like, in this conversation, is a tutor wrong too? Because some people can't afford that.
No,
Like some people don't have money for that.
I was gonna say, if you're gonna say that a tutor's wrong, then like, no one can wear nice clothes, no one can do anything, like, life's not fair.
It goes back to the whole like utilitarianism is too demanding thing. Like if we try to make it all equal for everyone, we're constantly be like taking children out of puddles. Like then the same thing. Like you have to still allow access to certain resources, and in this situation, a tutor can be considered a resource. Like,
And it still goes back to money. Like these people, like if this is what they're good at, if they're good at getting people into college, doing the SATs, that's their form of living. That's if someone else goes to work for Market Basket, their living is doing this for people. So it's also helping themselves out in having money for their lives, for they can eat, so that they can have clothes, so that they can have a place to live. Like it's a two-way street.
But there's a huge difference between getting tutored and sitting down and studying and paying someone else to take your SAT.
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
there's a huge jump between that. There's nothing wrong with a tutor that's, yeah, of course some people can afford it, some can't. But you're still putting in the work, you're still putting in the effort to pass this test. You're not handing someone a check and saying, okay, you're so-and-so for the day, go take the test for me and get a good grade. That's a completely different thing.
I think this goes back to like we should go back to our original question, which is how should colleges be administering students, not how we currently do this. Like I think we keep going back to like oh, this is how we are in society, this is how what we do in society is like, but the question is like, should more or less like, should we change this, or like how should this be changed so it is more ethically permissible on how we accept students and how we have students enter the classroom. And I think a lot of it goes back to the teachers in your middle school and your high school and even elementary. Like it goes back to the foundation of education, and like the teachers are responsible for educating you, and like they're responsible for educating all students, like no matter who the student is. And so whether or not they have resources, like they should all have this like foundation of education. And then yes, everybody has access to different resources, and I don't think that that's the issue. I think the issue is that there's too much weight on certain things, and I think it should be more of an equally distributed weight amongst different things depending on what the college's values are.
I don't think it's a like foundational issue. I think it's like a personal issue, because a whole college doesn't necessarily stand for what happened. But there was certain people at that college who allowed themselves to be bribed, and I feel like you can't blame the entire institution on that. You have to blame the person. As like a rowing coach, you should have realized that they don't have any of the credentials, they don't have any past scores of their rowing and all of that, and he should have looked at that and realized that it wasn't true and it was fabricated, but instead he just took the picture for what it was and allowed them to be in, and allowed them to bribe him. So I feel like on that way it's not personal, or it is personal, it's not foundational, because no college is outright saying like, oh, if you give me like $1 million, I'm going to let you in.
So if you're in college, what do you do the rowing coach? Like how
What
do
would
you,
I do to the rowing coach?
you're like,
Oh,
you're in
I would
charge.
get rid of him, because it reflects poorly on the college. And if
Yeah.
I was like the dean of the college, I'd just be like, okay, you just created a massive scandal for us,
Yeah.
which was extremely unethical. I'd remove them from the position and then replace his spot.
Exactly. So that goes back to the foundation where like it depends on how these colleges follow through. Like,
But that
who-
was the hiring process, not the foundation of their values.
Yeah, but then it's their scandal now. It's not just their own coach, it's the entire college's scandal. So now it's how they move forward with that. Do they keep their own coach? Do they keep these students enrolled? Like, that's when it turns back into not just the personal what their rowing coach did, but how the college, now knowing the scandal, treats it.
I think realistically, it's just like a personal thing though, because no matter what, at any college they can come across like a certain brand. But if you have one person that you didn't realize was doing something like this, it completely destroys the whole campus, which is horrible for the foundation. But it's not something that you can teach in like a middle school. You can't tell people. Like, yes, you can tell people what's wrong, what's right, but at like the core of someone, if they're ethical or unethical, that comes down to them, not what they're really taught. If that makes sense. I don't know if it
I think it does
makes
come. I think it does come down to some education. I think that starting. I mean, I'm an education major, so I'm biased towards all of this. But I think that starting young, teaching like in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and continuing it on throughout middle school and high school is sort of what leads students in the right direction. Like, I mean, yes, I think that everybody has their own sort of ideas of morality, and what they do with that is their choice. But I think that starting young and implementing sort of, this is what we do, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, like this is like teaching students about the social, emotional, and foundational stuff like that, and moving it on throughout education is what is gonna, like starting with education young is what's gonna move us in a better direction. I think is what I'm trying to get at.
What about the phrase that like money talks, where it's like, of course, if you have enough money, like a lot of people can be bribed by it. That could go back to like a personal factor, where someone could be like, I need this money that someone just grabbed me to let a student out on their own team, because like that could go to putting my child through school.
I think it also, you could look at that, like if someone offered you enough money to kill someone, are you still gonna kill that person? No, it's like your own personal morality. Like when you're put in an extreme situation, I don't know, personally, I value my job, so if someone's like, hey, let this kid on your team, there is a chance he'll get caught, but here's a check for $1 million. I still wouldn't do it. It's not worth the risk. So a person's own risk assessment will tie into that, and then tie into like the ethical part of it as well.
Yeah, even like if you're talking about like moral ethics, and you know, you brought up how it just kind of reflects society too. It's, you can put anyone in there. It's like if Kim Jong-un's building nuclear weapons and he slips Trump a lot of money and says, listen, you didn't see this happening, this is going on. Like, you're not gonna be okay with it. Like, I mean, you know, it's like, so regardless of like who's in the case, it's the fact that like people are taking bribes, and like, is it ethical to like take money for something that is, you know, kind of cut and dry, not okay?
So
I think it's not so easy to refuse a huge amount of money. Of course. Yeah, if you're a coach and you're just refusing a small amount of money and you have bills to pay and those stuff, it's really hard to just refuse a $1 million that will make your whole life better. So we should blame the parents at the first place that they pay those people.
But then it's like the coach's morals. Like, do you accept this money knowing that you're kind of breaching a certain like code?
Rich? So I'm gonna go where it left off about like the sports teams. Like the example with the Yale coach, where they accepted money to include a member on the team. That takes away from another person that maybe can't afford college but is a good athlete, that their only way to go to school could have been to make the team and get that scholarship to go to school. And by taking this person that doesn't play, but giving them the spot, takes away the opportunity for that other person.
I think that's even like, it's also like where you come from, you can say that too. It's like your high school that you went to can play into it. Like I went to a great high school and I'm so blessed for it. And like it's got me where I am today because I had great teachers and people always pushing me, and like there's always like someone that I could talk to and like they would help me hands on. And then it's like if you look in like inner cities and like just bad parts of areas, like their school systems are horrible, and like it's just like that's how they were brought up, and like they just can't help it. So you like don't get an equal opportunity, which brings it back to Trevor's point of in life, like everything's like not equal, and like you just have to like accept that like there's gonna be.
Yeah, I agree with your point. I feel like if we're going to look at the whole idea of like life's not fair and like getting into college isn't fair, we also have to look at the point as starting off those bases of at young elementary school is also not fair for those kids trying to get an education. So, I mean, like with the whole, what you were talking about with growing up in a good school system to then push you on afterwards, like play a part in it as well.
I feel like we are constantly in our group and then like the group before discussing this whole idea of like what we think that we deserve. So I feel like we should address it. And I think that our society, we have a tendency to play from this role, all of us, and this has nothing to do with whether or not gender and race will play a role after the fact, but originally I feel like we all play a role from this idea of like modern day privilege. Like, we believe we are entitled to fairness, that everything should be equal, that we should all have these rights, and it has a lot to do with the fact that our generation in its own is very forward thinking. We want everyone to be included. We want to make it inclusive. We'd like to do better than we did before, but you're trying to override years and hundreds of years of constant equality and create fairness in an unequal world. Like, for instance, one of the other groups brought up the fact that some of these students are like working very hard and they're doing all this work and they're still not getting in. That's life. That's all of life. Like, and some people, it moves past just an educational standpoint. If you are born of a minority, your life will be harder. First off, if you are a woman in general, or born of a minority, your life will naturally be harder than everybody else's. You can't, there's no way to cover that up or deny that fact. That's just what it is. And then to say, oh, like, I mean, it's great that when we walk in the room that we want to be like treated like everyone else, and you want to say like, I want to be able to have the same rights, but you have to also know in the fact that you don't have them. When you're applying for colleges, you don't have the equal opportunity right to the college.
But who decided, like, I get what you're saying, but who decided that? Like, I feel like that's such a pessimistic way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I mean, like, the world hasn't been the same the entire time that we've been in the world. Like, people are constantly trying to change things and make things more equal. And I think that, yeah, like, I mean, it's 2019 and we're not 110% equal, but we're closer to it than we were 100 years ago or 200 years ago. So it's like, I think it shouldn't be a question of like, oh, suck it up, like life sucks. Mm-hmm. I feel like, back to what Mindy was saying, like we keep straying away from like the question, and I feel like there needs to, why is it wrong to want things to be more equal?
I don't think that it's necessarily that it's wrong. I think wanting more is how we as a society do better. But you have to acknowledge that that is the way it is first. We can't do better until we say it's just unfair. We can't be like, oh, like, you know, oh, it's so sad that she tries so hard and she doesn't win. Nope, that's life. What are we doing as a total to be like, okay, well, we're gonna do something else as our perspective to make that better. If we sit here and like, oh my goodness, it's so unethical, we as a society is unethical. I wanna just scratch that almost out of the equation completely and make it more about like, we already know that it's unethical. This has been happening from before. This is our life that we live in. What is it that you need to do as a person in order to fight or work that system?
Does anyone think that it is ethical and like that? Yeah.
I think honestly, I don't think that it's unethical for colleges to accept for some students to not get in. Like, you may just, like, even if you do work hard and even if you do like get good grades, you may not be what the college is looking for. And I don't think that that's unfair. I don't think that that is what we're saying. I think what we're saying is that there's some people, like one of the articles was saying about the charter school in like Kansas City, I think, that these students have been working and working and working and working and working and doing everything that they can to get good grades, to work with their teachers, to work outside of school, to do extracurriculars, to put themselves in a good position to get accepted into these colleges, but then they're not because there's people paying extra money.
And I also think too, like the whole extra money thing, like it shouldn't be, you know, college is expensive already, so like the whole extra money thing, it just makes no sense. But the fact that the students are paying like, I don't know necessarily think it's wrong. How do you get into college? You pay. Like that is normally how you attend. You know, you pay for the services, it's business, whatever. But I just don't think like if the school does have these values, does have these like community thoughts that they want to instill in their campus, then accepting large amounts of money isn't okay. And like another thing is, it's not just like they're accepting large amounts of money. Those are donations. People donate to Lasell all the time. Like that's not illegal. What's illegal is the fabrication of the ACT scores, or the having someone else take them. And when you have these people donating $450,000 to get their child in the school, they're not just donating that money. They're doing practices like this. They're doing these fabrications. They're having someone else take their test. They're paying off the proctor so that way someone can amend their SAT answers. It doesn't really work. They're fabricating that the student plays an extracurricular sport activity, and it's just like one practice would be one thing. I don't think the practice of giving lots of money to an institution is wrong. That's not wrong at all. That's how you do it. But it's these other supplemental, behaviors and practices that make that whole thing wrong, and that's what I don't like.
But that to me still confuses me, because we can't sit here in one breath and say it's okay to pay colleges large sums of money to get in, but it's not okay to do the things necessary to also get in on top of the money.
Those things are illegal.
And I don't think those things are necessary.
Right, yeah. And like someone else is doing this.
So wait. It is necessary to pay with cash, but it's not, but you don't think that after we just sat here and established that that unfairness is a part of our society, that it's necessary for you to take specific measures in order to ensure that you go there?
I don't think Tim was saying donations and then you get into school. I think he was saying donations in general.
Yeah, there are donations
like you can donate to a school. It's not whether or not what family has the most money.
People do it all the time to us.
Right. I don't think he was saying though that you should be able to pay in any form for your child.
Like someone was saying that like if their parent really if they had the means to do it, they would do it because their parent loves their child. What parent would do the most for their child if they could? Well, if that's illegal, your parent's not doing the most for you. They're breaking the law to benefit you. That's illegal. That's just straight up fraud. That's an unfair advantage over, not even unfair, it's an illegal advantage over the rest of the world. That we've outlined these things, these laws to make it so, not everyone's a fair chance.
We also went through a society where we lawed that you could drink from the same water fountain as another person. Did that make it right? Are we using law to decide what's right and wrong?
Well, there was also none of us were really surprised about it. Like everyone, even in the articles I was reading, everyone was kind of appalled, but they weren't like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And I think that lends to the idea that our society might not think this is all that bad. We do live in a capitalist society. This is a country where the class system is important and affects everybody.
So here's what I think is the hard question we've been dancing around. Lasell needs a new athletic center. It costs $30 million. Suppose that Sally's parents have $30 million. And Sally's kind of borderline for getting into Lasell. And they come and they say, if you accept Sally, you're going to have a new athletic center. Now that's different from Sally's parents saying, we love Lasell, we're going to give $30 million and build the Sally Athletic Center. But it really is, they're expecting something in return for this donation. It seems to me there's a really good utilitarian argument for that, which is everybody gets to use the athletic center. We get one more slacker student, and who knows, maybe she'll thrive here, we don't know. So why not take that money and let Sally in? What's the moral problem of that?
Because Jimmy got denied because he didn't have 30 mil to give for a new athletic center, and Jimmy and Sally came from the same place. They're the same, and I guess that's ultimately. And trust me, life's not fair. I would say that Sally should get in. I think you're right. More benefit from that.
Anyone's gonna take the money when you offer them money. It's when you're walking down the street, someone's like, I just found something around, do you want $10? And you're gonna be like, no, it's not mine, I don't want to take you're gonna take the money. So it's Sally comes in with $30,000 extra, yeah, the school needs something and they want to buy something more, they're gonna take the money. And I don't think they're wrong for that. Because that's what they're gonna do. That's how they make their money.
They're technically thinking of their students. Their interest is in their students. Their students want a new athletic center, it'll make their students happy to take this money.
So I'm getting more confused by the
Me too,
second.
trust me.
So
Switching sides.
if we, because I'm confused. If we are all about benefiting, it's okay to take the money, but if it's just your kid only, then it's not.
That's the utilitarian aspect of it. That's the
The
utilitarian.
utility.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then to me it goes back to like the means and not ends.
Right.
They're using her for their money, but then she might swim. If she doesn't succeed in school, then she's here for her money, not for her intelligence or academic or future.
So it depends on how you look at it ethically. Like, if you're looking at it in a utilitarian perspective, then yes, it is right, because it benefits everybody. But if you're looking at it in a different, or like in, or with justice theory, or I don't know if that's necessarily the right one, but if everybody is considered, like if we do have that veil of ignorance and everybody is considered equal, well, I guess it wouldn't, because you wouldn't have the 30 mil to think about if it was justice theory. But scratch that. But if you're using like another ethical theory that's not utilitarianism, you can deny the fact, you can say it's not ethically correct based on a different theory, like what Jared was saying.
I think that's one of the problems. I think like we do kind of look at everything with justice theory, like on a default almost.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people going into this are probably thinking like this is unfair, and you know it might be unfair, but why are we using, like we already said, like life's unfair, like this class system's unfair, like how can we can't really use that.
I think life, like you're saying, and also like this whole concept of schools and whether or not the money should be accepted, is all like underneath the basis of our social contract as people, like what we deem that we should or should not be able to do. And I don't really think there's a right or wrong to this. Like like you said, like we live in a capitalistic society. That's just, and we live with certain unfairness. And while I can't remember her name, but while she said that how, you know, her parents would not accept the money, she personally would not accept the money. She holds herself to a specific, what is virtue the right word? Standard, thank you. She holds herself to a specific standard. But that's not the humanities standard, that's just her own interpersonal one.
Here's a good place to stop.